Well, I don't know what to say after that introduction. I'm not used to anything like that. Clint said, I'm introducing you tonight. Is there anything you want me to say or not to say? And I said, just make something up, and he did. So I appreciate Clint and Andy and all you guys more than I could ever hope to say for allowing me to be a part of this group here and to be a part of the group that stands up here before you from time to time teaching and once in a great while to stand up there. And I'm not after anybody's job, so don't sit over and sweat this, will you? I'm just here to have a good time and teach the word and to help out any way I can. I don't know what I think about this topic. I've played with this thing for a long time now. How do we go into all the world with the gospel, evangelism? And I looked at that and I thought, well, somebody likes me. That's the easiest topic I've ever had. But the more I think about it, the more I think, well, it's not as easy as I thought it was, because the culture change over the years has changed the way that we go out into all the world. It's still the same gospel. It's still the same word. Still belongs to God. It's not going to change, but sometimes we have to change kind of some of the methods that we take it out to the world. Some of them have become easier. Some of them I don't care much for. But that's because of the way that I grew up and the way that we did things, and it's the old school way, and I'm kind of, stuck into some of those things. I want to do two things tonight. And if you're saying silent prayer as we sit there, this is what I want. I want to glorify God in my efforts. And I want you to be uplifted through what we're saying. If I can accomplish those two things, then I consider this evening to be a huge, huge success. Did you notice the title? There's an implication in that title. Did you figure out what it was? How do we go into all the world with the gospel? The same implication you find in Matthew 28 and Mark 16. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Mark 16 says, and he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who believes not will be condemned. Did you get the implication of those two? It's implied we're going. It's a commandment. It's not a suggestion. And I look at this and I say, we don't have a choice. God said to take the gospel and go into all the world. So there's an implication there that we're going into all the world. The second thing is what we're going to take with us when we do go into all the world is the gospel. And the third thing is he doesn't tell us how. That's kind of left up to us. But he tells us where to go, and he tells us what he wants done when we do go. And that's pretty simple coming from God's point of view. And that may not be quite as easy for us to practice that, but the implication, the idea is really a pretty simple thing. So where do we start? Well, I think we start right at the beginning. In Acts 1, verse 8, in Acts 1, they're waiting for the Holy Spirit to come down on them to fill them with what they needed to go so they could go out and take the gospel to the world, and the church would be established, and Christianity would be established later on, and all these things are going to be happening. But what impresses me in that is, he says, you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be witnesses to me in Jerusalem, right where they were. They started right where they were at, in Jerusalem. And in all Judea they spread out, and Samaria they spread out more, and to the end of the earth. So you see, they started right where they were. And that's what impresses me about that passage and that verse in particular, because we look at that going to all the world and we think, oh, wow, how do I do that? How do I get clear over yonder? Well, some of us will never get clear over yonder. So we start right where we are. Now, we can help people go over there. And when we do that, when we support people like Peter Ray and Mike Reese and Clint, when they go over across the big water and spread the word over there, we're a part of that group. We're not there physically, but we help support them to go to do the job. So that makes us a part of that. So whatever the results are over there, we also share in that. So there's ways that we can. Then you have this modern technology today. I remember when I was in the military, I started out in Okinawa. And the only way I could get any news from home was to get a letter. Well, that letter was about 2 to 3 weeks away once it was mailed. Can you imagine sending something over there today, and it gets there just in minutes of when you typed it and sent it? So you see, things have changed over the years, and we can actually do things that we couldn't do before. But what I want to do tonight is I'm just going to share some things that we can do to spread the gospel. And many of the things I'm going to share is things that we can do right here. We need to start someplace. So let's not jump over there until we start here. And sitting in the living room the other night, and Sandy said, "You all right?" And I said, "No." I said, "What's wrong?" So I'm just overwhelmed. I said, "We got all this stuff we got to get done in a short time to do it." And she said, "Just take a look at the elephant and eat it. Just take one bite at a time." So let's do that. It's good advice. It's good advice. So let's do that. When it comes to evangelism, let's look at the big elephant and just take one bite at a time. I don't know how many's here tonight, and it doesn't matter. I'm not after numbers. But if everyone here tonight brought one person to God within the next year, how many people would be here? What's the number one qualification to reach out to the lost? Now, I'm going out on a limb here because it's not what you're thinking. I'm thinking for us to go out to the lost, we have to have a passion for the lost. And the reason I say that is that we talk about those things that we care about, those things that we get excited about, those things that come into our hearts and our lives, and we'll share that. So why not get excited over Christ, over God? Now, I'm not talking about this hand waving, jumping up and down and screaming and shouting. I'm talking about getting excited over God in our hearts to the point that we understand where the people who are not members of God's family are headed. We think deeply about that. It touches us in our hearts and our minds. And we do everything we can to reach out to them, to share the gospel. Well, let's start at the beginning. How do we do that? Well, how about radio? Well, radio's not so popular anymore, is it? I don't know if they even have one here or not. I don't think they do. I know that they used to be on the radio here. I don't know where they went, maybe Fairmont. Anybody remember Paul Gray? Clarksburg, he was on the radio all the time, every week. Good show. Albert Farley in Weston, he was on the radio. That was one of the popular methods to reach out to the world. Well, that's kind of went by the wayside. We don't do that anymore. We have TV. That kind of came in after the radio, and it's a big hit, or was a big hit, and people were getting on TV and trying to share the gospel. And we have people like Phil Sanders on In Search of the Lord's Way. I'm not sure. It comes on, I think, on Dish. I don't know if it comes on cable or not. But it's a huge project and does a lot of good. So, there's different ways like that people are reaching out. We have the internet. You can send a message just right real quick. You know, what's the problem with email? Well, sometimes when we send an email and they receive it with different eyes and hearts than what we send it. So, you know, they're looking at that and they're saying, oh, what's Richard mad about now? What did I do? Well, nothing. My heart's reaching out to you. It's better to sit down one-on-one. That's the downside of the internet. It's a good tool. Email is a good tool, and I use it, and it's a good way to reach out to people. In fact, I can get a hold of my kids in Kentucky and in Maryland a whole lot quicker by sending an email than I can on the phone. Because they see, well, Dad's calling, we're not going to answer that. but there is a downside, because sometimes the words, if I'm going to teach somebody the gospel, I'd rather look at them in the face so they can see how I care about them and how I feel about them. And it just don't come out like a bunch of cold words on the paper. But that is a tool. This, you can't see this. Maybe I can't either. Yeah, that's what I figured. I had it all set up, and I thought all I have to do is open it up, and it'll be right there, but I lost it. Anyway, it's a blog for those of you that know what that is, and it's done by Tom Miller from Seymour Church of Christ. And Tom Miller is first cousin of Sandy's, and he was the one we had over at Norway for the teacher's workshop. And he does a blog every week. Now, this week he was talking about words. It's a 5-minute blog, just 5 minutes. That's all he takes. But he reaches out to the public with this weekly blog, and he talks about a lot of different subjects. And they're getting pretty good results with it down there. His target audience this week was members of the church, and he was talking about words, how words hurt you or words build you up. And I've been thinking a lot about that. I've been thinking that might be a pretty good tool, but if I go to do something like that from the house, I'm going to have some training. So it's not something I know how to do, but it's available. Live streaming is available to anybody that goes on the internet. And that's a good tool. If you're traveling, you can't get to a congregation someplace on Wednesday evening, you can always open this up and get to class. And it's a good tool to use. DVDs. Great tool. Personal evangelism. I just got it. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But it's by Rob Whittaker, and it's from WVBS. Alan Webster says Rob Whittaker's series is the best I've heard. So it'd be a good DVD. Searching for the Truth. What do I do with these? Well, I just hand them out. You find somebody interested in the gospel, and you just give them one of these and ask them to look at it at home. Or would they sit down with you and look at it together? Returning to the Truth is a good DVD. That's reaching out to those members who have once been here with us, but they're not here any longer. For whatever reason, they've left and gone out into the world. It's developed to get them to return to the truth. Why are there so many churches? I know that you've showed it here. We showed it at Norway when I was over there, when we were over there. And I've given a lot of these away. Don Blackwell, an excellent, excellent job on this. You don't have to know a lot about these. You can sit down and view them, and you get the idea of what's there, and you learn about them. You learn about the subject so you can talk about it. But these are self-teaching. You just give it to them. Yes?
And we have several of each of those three. If anybody has somebody want to give them.
Yeah, thank you. I'd forgotten that. But he did mention that to me earlier. And we can get more. These DVDs are really inexpensive. If you buy 20 of them, you get them for like $2 a piece. I'll go spend $20 on Oak Ridge Boys. I can get 10 of these for $20. So that's a good tool, and it's a modern tool, and everybody has a DVD player where they can just plug that in. And they're self-teaching. You don't have to be afraid of sitting down with somebody. That's the biggest scare of we all have is, well, what if they ask me a question I don't know and I can't answer. Well, the best answer you can give them is, I don't know. You're going to do more good by saying, I don't know, than you are by trying to bluff your way through and make it look like you know what you're talking about. Doesn't take long. They know I don't know what I'm talking about if I'll try to do that. So what I'll do from there? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm pretty sure that if I go talk to Clint, he would be glad to come and answer that question for you. Or I go talk to Andy or one of the elders and say, hey, I need some help here. This is the question and I don't know how to answer. So would you come and talk to him and set up a time to study together? And that's a simple way. Well, what about the modes of evangelism? Those are kind of some of the things that we can do. We just, we can do that without any effort at all. Give somebody a DVD, set up a study. It doesn't take much to try to, well, I don't know the answer to that question, but, I know somebody does. So, but what about me? What can I, as a member of the Lord's church, do to reach out to those that are lost? How do you feel about the lost? Let's start there. How do you feel about the lost? Once you've answered that question, then you can go to the next question. Well, how do I get to those out there that are lost? Well, let's look at some of the ways. There's the initiative evangelism. That is not my favorite. That is one that gives me all kinds of fits. Because I just am not good at starting the conversation. Now, I have a lot of opportunities, and I use those opportunities, but most generally, I'm not the one that starts it. Now, I may create the opportunity and looking for a way to get into that, but just to walk up to somebody and say, I want to talk to you about the gospel. I'm just not good at doing it that way. I have my preferred methods that I like to use. But Acts chapter 8, and I want you to look at what's going on here in this passage, chapter 8, beginning with verse 1, book of Acts. Saul was consenting to Stephen's death. One bad thing right there to start with. At that time, there was a great persecution arose against the church, which was at Jerusalem. Second thing is going bad here. And they were all scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria except the apostles. And devout men carried Stephen to his burial and made great lamentation over him. As for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house and dragging off men and women, committing them to prison. Look what the church is against. And look at the bad things that's going on out there the church is facing. And look at the last phrase there. Therefore, those who were scattered went everywhere preaching the word. They took the initiative. God had to help them a little bit. Understand that. God took all those little bad things and shook them up and poured them out, and the people took off and went their different directions and spread the gospel. They took the initiative. Now, some of you are really good at that. Some of you are really good at just walking up to someone and saying, hello, how are you doing? My name is, what's your name? And by the way, can I share with you the gospel for a few minutes? And that may be the way you prefer to do that. You just take the initiative and go for it. There's no Chinaman was known in the church community of bringing more people to the church and reaching out to more lost souls than anybody else. Somebody asked him, said, well, what method do you use? And he said, well, this is what I do when I reach out to the lost. I get on my knees and I talkie. And then I get on my feet and I walkie. That's about as simple as you can get, isn't it? Always start out with our prayer. Before we do any reaching out to anybody, any fashion, any way, start start with a prayer. Ask for God's help to get you through the moments where you're really trying to reach out to people. And then use the initiative and go for it. Well, how about lifestyle evangelism? That's where those people we come in contact with see us. They watch us. It's through everyday relationships, the interactions that we have or that they would have with us in our different places. How do they see us? We go to work in the morning. How do our coworkers see us? We go into Walmart shopping, and how do the people over there see us? Now, Walmart can be frustrating, let me tell you. How do the people see us? How do those people that we come in contact with every day see us? How do they view us? They view us as, would you see what she did, and they say they're a Christian? Or do they see us in such a way they say, hey, I know what you just went through right there, and that's very frustrating. Why are you viewing it like you are? Why are you coming out the other side with all smiles and act like nothing's going wrong? You have a chance to share the gospel. It's that lifestyle that they see us day in and day out. They see us in situations where they know that we're frustrated. They see us in situations where they know that they'd never react that way if it was them. But they want to ask questions about it. And that opens a door. Andrew brought his brother Peter to Christ. How much do you know about Andrew? How much do you know about Peter? You know a whole lot more about Peter than you do Andrew, don't you? But at least twice, that comes to my mind, and maybe more, I'd have to go back and do a little research, but at least twice, Andrew is mentioned in the Bible, and he's bringing somebody to Christ. And we think, well, poor old Andrew, he was living in his brother's shadow. But he did something that could not have been done if he had not brought Peter to Christ. And Peter went on to spread the gospel, preach that great sermon on the day of Pentecost, and did a lot of good works for God. Would that have happened if Andrew hadn't brought him to Christ? Lifestyle. Philip brought his friend Nathanael, John 1, verses 40 to 51. He brought him to Christ. You live right, people see it, and they ask questions. Influence is a good word for that. We share the gospel by our influence. What we're trying to do is just open the door so that we can begin to have some conversations, and we can talk with them, and we can share the gospel with them. Because they see our lifestyle, they want to know what that's all about. Why are you like that? What makes you like that? What makes you so happy, I suppose, in a world that seems like it's just being turned upside down? How can you face all this stuff and still react like you do? Why are you not throwing stuff and fussing and fuming and using all kinds of language that we shouldn't be using like the world does? Why are you like that? Well, it's simple. Jesus Christ went to the cross for me. Can I share that with you? It's a way to open the door. And that's what we're trying to do. My favorite is the relational evangelism style. It focuses on spreading the gospel through relationships, through relational networks, current friendships. What do you talk to your closest friend about? A friend out here in the world that maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's somebody you know, maybe somebody in the neighborhood, maybe you just got a really, really good friend, and we have those out here in the world. What do you talk to them about? That's the easiest for me to talk to, because I've already got a relationship with them, and I think I can sit down and talk to them without upsetting them and getting into an argument and different things like that. So I like this relationship. It's slow. That's the downside. It's slow. My opinion is it's the best, but it's slow. Do we have time? I don't know. And that's the question we face. Well, I'm working on it. Looks like it's getting good. But what if we run out of time? I don't have answers for that. But I know if we don't give up on these people, they may come to Christ. If we don't make an attempt, they won't. It's just kind of cut and dry. We have a passion for those that are lost. We want to reach out to them. I read a fictitious story. I really like the story. It's fictitious, but it has a super good point. We've all seen the conversations, the fictitious conversations between Peter and Christ, Peter and God, and they're everywhere. And if you've done any research, don't you be looking at that clock, Jim. I ain't even got started. Now I lost my thought. Oh, well, I had a story to tell, too. Oh, good. Thank you. You probably heard that story. But, yeah, a conversation between Peter and Christ, or Peter and God. And Peter says, to them, well, now how are we going to take all this good news to the world? To the world? And God says, well, you go into all the world and you spread the good news. Peter says, well, what if people won't listen? What's plan B? God says, there is no plan B. Let that sink in. We only have one plan, and that's what God gave us. There's no plan B if we fail. We go into all the world and we take the gospel to the world. That's the only plan God has. And it's up to us to see that, to see that it happens. We can focus on current friendships. We can make new friendships. You ever run into somebody and first time you meet them, you talk with them, and you kind of develop an ongoing conversation. And over the next several months, maybe a year or so, you develop a good friendship, and you be able to start talking with them about the gospel. So you make current friendships, new friendships. Look for opportunities to talk about Christ in existing relationships. Intentionally put ourselves in a network of people for the purpose of sharing the good news. Go where the people are. Maybe something common there, but I may not want to go, but it might be something common, might be something to do at work, and everybody's coming together for a dinner or something, whatever, and you really don't want to go, but you put yourself in that network because somebody there will listen to what you have to say. Matthew chapter 9, Matthew invited his friends to a dinner party where they could meet Christ. John chapter 4, the Samaritan woman. I love that. That's one of my favorite passages. The woman at the well in John 4. You remember that story? And we're not going to talk about that, but there's something I wanted to share with you at the end of that conversation. After the conversation she had with Christ, she goes back to the city. And she tells the people there, come see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came to him. Isn't that beautiful? What we want to do is get the gospel to the people out here in the world and bring them to Christ. Share Christ with them. You talk about anything you love, what do you love? Christ should be way, way up there, right? We should be able to talk about Christ to anybody because we're excited about him. We're excited about the fact he went to the cross, for us. I want to get this one in and maybe one more. The body witness. Unbelievers are exposed to the gospel through contact with a group of Christians. Now that sounds a little strange, but let me share some examples here. The body witness. What do they see in that? When they come in contact with a group of Christians, they see unity, John 17, and the love we have for one another, John 13. Well, how does this work? Well, how about our Tuesday Bible study? You didn't think I was going to not plug that a little bit, right? But let me tell you why I think the small groups work, and I appreciate Clint's comments so much. That the small group really work well because we're focused on a chapter or a book, and you can bring people that's outside the church. You can bring your friends, your neighbors who are not Christians, and not be afraid that we're going to point right at them for the whole hour and say something, about whatever we think they need, step on their toes and make them squirm, and they leave and they think, I ain't never going back there because that whole class was all about me. Well, you lose that because what you're doing is you're starting with chapter 1 and you're working your way through, and if we ever get through Ephesians, we're going to touch on baptism several times. It doesn't mean we're going to spend the whole hour on it, but it means we're going to open that door and give them enough information that if they're outside of Christ, then perhaps they'll want to come back and get more. That's the focus of that. Plus, the second thing is it's encouraging for us as Christians to come together, to be together, and just to share our love and our life. So those types of things, the body witness, as we call it, connecting events such as socials, invite them to cover dish dinners or whatever there may be going on. Or maybe you got a group going to a ball game, and you say, oh, my buddy down there loves ball games, so let's invite him to join our little group. And things like that are ways to open the door for Christ. Friends and Family Day. Somebody want to throw something in. I want to plug this because God did something really amazing when we had our Friends and Family Day, but I done lost that thing. Oh, here it is. Okay, the 3 P's. Prior, proper planning. In any event, we've got a gospel meeting coming up in September. We need to apply the 3 P's. We need to have some good planning long in advance. And that's one of those things, we want to get back to the idea of gospel meetings. We've lost that. Gospel meetings, we're reaching out to the lost. We've lost that. Now there are revivals. We're reaching out to those in the church, trying to get them to stay in church. So we want to get back to this gospel meeting idea. But we'll talk about the Friends and Family Day because it was a good avenue to get people to come that haven't been to church for a long time, to get our friends to come, get our family members to come. We just opened the door to everybody. Now this was made for the workshop. We did one of these for the Friends and Family Day at Norway. We sent out 200 of these. Everybody in the congregation took 3 or 4 or 5, stuck an address on it, a little personal note here in the back about the Friends and Family Day, just inviting them. Didn't say much at all. I think I had a picture of a family going into a church building and the friends and family around the outside of it. Didn't say hardly anything, but it was enough to catch their attention. Made them think about, what are they doing? What is this? And And we did that 2 months before the planned day. One more month before the planned day, we did one of these. Now, I picked this up at PTP. It was a workshop they were doing. But that's where I got the idea. It's a trifold. On the front was friends and family, and just a little thing about what the friends and family was. The inside was the lessons, the outlines, some information about the Friends and Family Day. The back of it, I put the church address, the phone number, which happened to be mine, and just some information about the church. Times the church was, the times we gathered together. And we sent 200 of these out. We started within the congregation just throwing out little blurbs. During our Bible classes, during our sermons, we just worked them in just enough to create attention in people's minds. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. We just kind of threw a little blurb out there to them. So we worked really hard on that, and God really opened the doors. Those are some of the things we can do to reach out to a group of people, the body witness, to get people to come here and see us and join us and see how we care for each other and how we relate and react to one another. And that's a good way to do that. People think Christians are sticks in the mud. I don't know if you noticed that or not. They think we have no fun. But we are the happiest, the most fun-loving people on the earth. We have lots of fun everywhere we go, what we do. I even put up with people just because I like them. All right. I'm not naming names. I learned not to do that a long time ago. But we want people to know who we are. And the idea of the Friend and Family Day, the idea of gospel meetings, the idea of workshops, is not only to teach us and to help us, but it's to let the community know that we're here. Well, it's easy to give up on something because we're not seeing results.
Well, we didn't give up. We just changed positions.
Well, there you go. That's, yeah, that was my point.
The other thing, along with what you had there, don't ever want to forget about Joe T. Raju.
Mm-hmm.
Joe T. is there. He's a permanent fixture over there, I think, because they're not going to let him come back.
Yeah.
But he is good, and look what he has done. God's help, of course, started school.
Yeah.
They're using the Bible. He's there here
we never know how much good we do, and we got to stop here. But in reality, we don't do things anymore because they seemingly don't work like they used to 50 years ago. So we've kind of put them to the wayside, and if we do them, somebody would think, well, that's something new. But keep this in mind. No matter what we do or how we do it, when we're reaching out to the souls, to the lost souls, we're trying to bring somebody into the kingdom of God. If it's only one person, if that's all we get is one person, then we've won a soul for God's kingdom.
That's the way the system works.
Yes.
And maybe next year at this time, the one who refused it here because he may be looking for it next year.
If you have any questions or any comments or anything, well, you can see me after services. I'll be glad to answer whatever I can. If I don't have the answers, I'll send you to Clint and Andy. So don't be afraid